Welcome to Solo Sailing with Trev White, and today I'm going to discuss anchors, basically 101 anchoring in the Pacific and a little bit about New Zealand and Australia. So I have a 44-foot alloy ketch, weighs 12 tonne, traditional style boat. It can carry a fair amount of gear, and on my vessel the anchor locker is about 6 feet back from the bow. It's just in front of the mast, and that carries away a little ways back. It currently got about 50 metres of chain in there, but I'm going to be changing that to 100 metres very shortly. And on top of that I have 60 metres of 18mm rope, and then I have an additional 150 metres of separate rope with 15 metres of chain as my backup anchor warp. My primary anchor is a 20 kilo Rockner. I have a backup anchor, which was a 25 kilo Delta. I have another backup anchor, which is a 25 kilo Plough or CQR. I have another backup anchor, which is a Fisherman's or Admiralty style anchor, one of the curved ones with the flukes, the sharp flukes. And then my Cyclone anchor is a 60 kilo Danforth, one of the big flat anchors, and that is strapped to the top of the cabin. So that's my anchors, and then I also have a couple of small dinky anchors as well with chain on them. So if you're in the Pacific, you need chain. Rope is not going to cut it, or rope will be cut. It's coral and sharp rock everywhere. You need at the very least all the gear on the bottom to be chain, even if you're running a chain rope combo. And it is deep, or it can be deep. A lot of the anchorages are 8 to 15 metres, and then there's quite a few which are 20 to 25 metres plus. So that makes anchoring difficult for anybody. No one likes to anchor in 20 metres of water. It's a lot of chain out. It's deep. So I generally work on a 5-to-1 scope. So if it's 10 metres deep, I've got 50 metres of chain out. And it's debatable whether you include or add the length of the boat as well. Some people do, some people don't. So for a lot of the sailing I've done, I've got nearly all my chain out all the time. That's good because I'm using it all. It's not just sitting in the locker. But for the odd occasions where I'm in places that are 20 metres or 25 metres deep, then I've got all of my chain out and I've got rope out as well. And I'm not as keen on the rope. Like, the rope is a benefit in some ways because it does give you a bit of stretch, absorption. But if something goes wrong and it starts rubbing up against a bommy or a rock, then it's not going to last very long. The chain, whilst it's sad to say, will grind its way through sharp rocks and coral if it comes in contact with it, but you're not losing your boat. And we all try to anchor sensitive to the environment, so we stay away from live coral. We try to anchor out a little bit deeper where the coral isn't growing. But sometimes, we're anchoring in old coral fields, or there's just rock strewn everywhere. So that's just reality of life. And then a lot of the bottoms that I find are also like coral sand. So the coral is eroded into this corally sand, and it's really difficult to get a pick in. So I found the CQR and the Delta don't set very well in these conditions. They're pretty okay in sand. Sand and mud, they're fine. But in the hard coral sands, they're more difficult to get set, and they'll lie on their side and they'll drag. I find the Rockner sets like a gem. I think I've had one failure. The rest of the time I drop it. I generally lower my anchors onto the bottom and then lower chain about 30 metres of chain out, set the anchor, haul on it, and then I'll put the rest of the chain out and let it set. That's my sort of go-to, I guess. Now, in addition to all of that, I have a product called an anchor buddy, or it's an anchor chain weight. So I have a 20 kilo length of 100 mil stainless steel bar. On one end is attached a shackle and a stainless steel carabiner, and then I attach a rope to that. So I clip that onto my chain and I lower that down the chain once all my chain is out until it gets to the seabed, and then I raise it back up a metre. And what that does, if a big blow comes in, it keeps the chain on the bottom, because if your chain's not on the bottom, it's actually not effective. It's or not as effective. So I still believe, the anchor is there to set and give you purchase, and then your anchor chain is there to provide friction on the seabed and helps the anchor do its job. Excuse me. And then I use the anchor buddy to give the anchor chain a lot more purchase. So it's the same as lowering an additional anchor down. But because it's about 2 foot long, it's smooth steel bar. It's easy to drop over the side of the anchor roller. It's easy to recover, and it's easy to stow, and it doesn't rust. So all of those things are a benefit on my boat. So why so many anchors? One is not enough, and I keep telling that to people because I meet people who have one anchor. It's madness. 2 is the very minimum, in my opinion. 3 is better. So the CQR, the Delta, and the Rockner or a Mason, one of those style anchors, all work well as your primary anchor. They set once they're dug in. They've got a pretty good purchase. They can dig in and hold you in a fair gale. I use the fisherman's anchor, and that's my primary second. It's attached to my second rode and chain. It folds up, so it takes up less room on the bow, and it's a little bit lighter. It's probably only 15 kilos. So with mine, I've got bigger flukes on it. I've welded them on, and they're razor sharp. So it's designed to be used in weed. So I was using that in places in South Australia and in Tasmania where there's lots of weed and kelp. And I had it on board for New Zealand, but I didn't find those conditions in New Zealand where I was. So an old fisherman put me onto it. His advice was make it so sharp it will cut meat. So mine they're razor sharp, and they will cut through kelp easily. Cut through your leg easily as well if you're not too careful. But I sharpen them up, and then I just re-galvanise them with spray galv. So that sits on the front deck. The rest of my anchors are either primaries or spares, and but the Rockner is becoming the go-to. It's a really good anchor. Sets easily, holds really well, sets in nearly all bottom types without any problems. The Mason is a very similar type of anchor, and there's a couple of other new anchors coming out in that format. So how big do you go? I'm sort of the belief that you go for the manufacturer's recommended weight. Mine's 20. I could probably get 25. 20 kilos sets really well. I'm not carrying a huge amount of weight. Some people put like 35 kilo anchors. They say it helps them sleep at night. I don't doubt that. It's a lot of weight up in the bow, and it's a lot of weight on your windlass. But it's a personal choice, and big is better. In saying that, you need a minimum of 100 metres chain. If you're going to the Pacific and you're sailing, even New Zealand, 100 metres chain is minimum. I use 10 mil galv. It's good quality. My chain is probably 20, 30 years old. Needs to be replaced. It's a soon-to-do project. But it wears really well, and it has provided good service. Some people go stainless, and some people go high tensile steel, which is less weight. It's a personal choice. You've got to research it and work out what's right for you. If you're a fast, light boat, high tensile or a combo of high tensile and rope could be the go, or galvan rope. If you're a cruiser like me, budget is a consideration, then galvanised chain, good quality, not that Chinese shit. I'm trying to find some European-made galvanised chain, 10mm, short link, that is going to last 20 years minimum. There's a lot of dodgy chain out there which is made very poorly and will rust quickly, so be very careful when you're buying chain. Same with anchors. If you're buying a Delta, and you can pick up Deltas really very affordably. I bought my 25 kilo for 250 Australian dollars, bargain. It was an original, but there's a lot of rip-offs, so you need to make sure the steel's good and the welds are good. Making an anchor buddy, I think there's one company that makes them, but they're very easy to make. Just get some axle steel, and you can knock one up. I'll put a link on my website about anchor buddies. But I think the key is to understand what the bottom types are going to be, have a minimum of 100 metres, run a 5-to-1 scope, so 5 times the depth of anchor chain. If it's going to be blowy, consider an anchor buddy. And then once you've got all that done, if you need some sort of absorber. So when you're anchoring, it can get rolly. You get pushed around a bit. You might get a bit of swell coming in, so you start lunging at the chain. So there's a variety of different methods people use. Some people use dedicated ropes, snubbers they call them, and what I tend to do is I have a piece of 10mm rope which is rated to 3 tonne. I put a rolling timber hitch on that. I tie it off to a cleat, and I lower that over the bow for about 3 metres of rope I use, and until the chain goes slack. And then I put a bit more chain out, and the snubber is taking up the load. And if it starts breaking or starts failing, then I need to consider what's going on. So where was I? I was down in Apollo Bay, anchored in the bay with a big ass westerly blowing. It was perfect conditions, and got in there. It was blowing 60 knots. Got the anchor down, felt pretty comfortable, and over the course of the evening we started getting swell coming in. Conditions hadn't improved, and I had a 3-tonne rope basically snap and thread out. So that loaded up my windlass and bent my shaft on the windlass. So that can happen, but it did reduce the snatching on the anchor chain at the time. Some people run like a V sheet with an anchor cleat, chain cleat. They put on the chain and they run it to both sides. That's probably also quite good. And there's also webbing versions which are stronger. I've been using the rope version. It generally works quite well. It's very simple. It's easy to replace. Wears, I just cut a new piece of rope, and tying on the timber hitch holds well on chain, and it goes over the anchor roller with no problems and recovers with no problems. So I'm not trying to hang over the end of the anchor roller as it's surging up and down to get an anchor cleat off, which a lot of people I see do. Again, very personal choice, but these are just my thoughts. I think that's about it for chain, but the key takeaways: 100 metres of chain, a 5-to-1 ratio, a decent anchor. You can sleep at night, because we're up in the Pacific cruising around. If you drag and you hit the rocks, there is no one there to save you. Your anchor and anchor chain are your lifeline. You want those things to work and to keep you safe. The anchor snubber just gives you a slightly more comfortable sleep at night. I use an anchor alarm on my GPS. I run that every night. Excuse me. And I use a a secondary one on my phone if I'm feeling it's a bit dodgy. And sometimes I'll even turn the radar on with a guard zone. So I have often found myself waking with the anchor alarm going off because I'll set them a little bit tight sometimes. But I'd rather get up through the night and annoy my crew than drag and end up on the reef. And it happens all the time. I see people on the reef, I see people getting into trouble, I see people running aground, I see people dragging into other people's boats. Probably the other thing to talk about is swimming on your anchor. So, as I stated before, some of the bottoms are really hard, like they're almost coral, or corally rock, or coral sands. And sometimes your anchor doesn't dig in that well. So I tend to swim on my anchor. Most anchorages, I'll drop the anchor, set it, dive overboard, and I'll go down and I'll swim on the anchor. And as long as it's set and the anchor chain looks good, then I can sleep well at night. On occasions, I've gone down and the anchor is just under a little stone shelf. It's twisted around, and in a big blow, if that stone shelf snapped, we would be dragging onto the rocks. So I've found those situations probably 2 or 3 times, and by swimming on it, I've had the time to fix that problem or change positions, which has kept me afloat and safe, and my crew safe. So yeah, highly recommend swimming on your anchor. If you're too crusty to swim on your anchor, then invest in a little subsurface drone. That don't cost much, a couple of grand, but it'll give you peace at night. What else have we got going on with anchors? The only other thing I'll probably talk about is shackles or anchor swivels. So I use stainless, no, I don't use stainless, I use galvanised steel swivels because I find and have experienced stainless steel swivels snapping without any warning. Galvanised, when it starts to deteriorate, it rusts. So when I see my galvanised shackles rusting, I change them for new shackles, and I run 2. I run 2 at the from the anchor to the chain. That gives it a bit of movement through there. I've considered putting shackles on. I see shackles on, not shackles. I see swivels on lots of boats. My only consideration would be I would put an oversized swivel on that still suits the anchor and chain and can get over the roller. Because it always concerns me that these stainless steel swivels are not big enough, and stainless steel does fail without warning. Just my personal consideration. The company might guarantee it, but they're not going to be there to save your ass at 2 o'clock in the morning in a 50-knot gale. I think that's about it for anchoring. Anchoring Pacific 101 from a bloke who's been doing it for a while. I've been sailing for 30 years, so I have dragged anchor a number of times. I've anchored poorly a number of times, but each time I hope to try and get it a little bit better. So thanks for joining me on Solo Sailing with Trev, and we can talk about some of these issues. I'd like to hear from you guys as well. It's probably a topic every time I go to the pub with other sailors is anchoring, anchor chains, anchor gear, anchoring techniques. We might even talk about other anchoring techniques in a further podcast. Talk about this stuff all night on the rumbos. Thanks.